Let's start by defining our terms. When we talk about media relations, we're referring to a company's interactions with editors, reporters, and journalists. The aim is to communicate a newsworthy story via a media outlet such as a magazine, newspaper, radio, television, or the internet. When someone picks up your story, it's called earned media. This cost-effective method of marketing refers to media activity related to a brand, product, or service that isn't directly generated by you, but by journalists. Therefore, making friends and influencing journalists should be a priority when it comes to shaping your media relations strategy. Journalists can secure coverage for your brand in mainstream digital and print publications, which guarantees you access to a large audience and boosts the legitimacy of your story. During this 3-part webinar series, you will learn how to connect with journalists, come up with a story and create a press release, and communicate your pitch. Part 1. Connecting with journalists. Remember, earned media can place your brand, product, or service in front of thousands of potential customers, so it's essential to invest time and energy in establishing these relationships. Here are 3 things to keep in mind when reaching out to and connecting with journalists. Begin by doing your homework. This means having the correct name of the journalist you want to contact and finding a targeted email address rather than just a generic one. Read, watch, or listen to the publications and programs where you'd like to secure coverage. You need to know their target audience, content style, and kinds of story they typically cover. Media monitoring forms an essential part of a successful PR strategy, so listen to what people are saying about your brand and your industry across print, online, social, and broadcast media. Secondly, don't just ask for coverage. Follow the journalists you want to connect with on social media and read and share their stories that resonate with your industry, product, or service. Keep on top of the latest developments and share information and insights with journalists to help them break stories faster and better than their competitor. The spray and pray approach to PR won't work here. Instead, nurture a relationship-based approach to communications. This means seeking a two-way conversation with influencers. The third consideration when approaching a journalist is to form a real human connection. Journalists receive hundreds of pitches each week, so you need to stand out from the crowd. Arrange face-to-face meetings and always be transparent about what you are offering. For example, do you have an exclusive story? Do you have some interesting survey results to share? Or perhaps you can provide access to great imagery. Welcome journalists to your office or shop. Ask them to tour your warehouse and test your products or services. There's only so much you can convey in a press release, so ensure they get the whole picture. Instead of sitting around waiting for your pitch to be picked up, share the story via your website, blog, emails, and social media channels. Once you've got the journalist's attention, you need to keep them interested with a strong story. In the next part of our Media Relations webinar series, we look at creating a compelling press release. Journalists can spot the difference between a sales pitch and an attention-grabbing story a mile off. Therefore, you need to find an interesting way of subtly talking about your brand, product, or service. Most importantly, your story needs to be newsworthy. Think about your pitch and ask yourself the following questions. You should be able to answer yes to at least one of them. Pitches should be industry-specific, localized and customized to the audience of the media outlet you want to be featured in. There are 4 elements to think about when coming up with your story: angle, anticipate, ask, assets. Let's take a look at each of these now, starting with angle. Consider the time of year, the audience, and the typical content of the publication, as well as whether you're looking to share your story on a local, national, or international level. Request an editorial calendar and ask for a forward features list from the publication you're interested in. That way, you can tailor your pitches in line with their media cycle. Ask yourself, what would you like to achieve? And communicate that to the journalist. Are you looking for inclusion in an editorial feature? Or do you or an employee want to be interviewed? Think about visual storytelling. Videos work well in digital publications, while print publications seek strong, high-res images. Journalists are time poor, so having a downloadable asset library that you can share might be the difference between getting your story told or not. So, you have decided on your story. Now you need to convey it in the clearest and most useful way possible. A successful pitch is built on 4 elements. First, the headline, which should concisely sum up the essence of your story. This is followed by an introduction or second headline. For this, you can take inspiration from the inverted pyramid structure, which is how all journalists are taught to write. Essentially, it means that your pitch should move from broad information to specific detail. With this in mind, your first 2 sentences should contain the who, what, where, why, and when, and, if it works, the how of your story. Quotes should offer an extra insight into the story, providing journalists with something that they will want to share with the readers. End the pitch with a note to editors section. This is where you include any relevant background and contact information. Finally, a few more pointers to ensure your pitch gets read. Don't get distracted by non-essential information. Include clear contact details and, if journalists want extra information or commentary, they can reach out to you. Break up the text with bullets and numbered lists, and use subheads to guide the reader through the key elements of the story. Finally, use larger or bold fonts for the headline and introduction, and use formatting tools to present quotes and key information more clearly. The next step in the cycle is communicating your pitch, and in the final part of our Media Relations webinar series, we tackle distribution channels and how to use them to your advantage. Part 3. Communicating your pitch. So, you've written your press release, but how are you going to get the message out there? The final part of our Media Relations webinar series examines 4 distribution channels and how to use them to your advantage. When it comes to email, here are a few best practice tips. Include the words press release in the subject line so journalists know you have something to share. Tweak the story you think could come out with a press release for the publication or journalist you are approaching. Include a link to your media library, rather than attaching a folder of high-res images that could clog up a journalist's inbox. Make a follow-up call where you stress the unique angle. Even if it doesn't secure coverage, a call might help you get a sense of why the journalist turned it down. Automating your PR activity could save you time thanks to increasingly sophisticated email marketing services that can segment your database and enable you to create and send personalized campaigns to specific groups. For example, you can send news of a product launch to consumer-facing media outlets that focus on reviews. You might also want to consider using digital PR platforms and online newsrooms to send your multimedia press release directly to a journalist's inbox with all relevant content assets attached. And, as people subscribe to your newsroom, you can be confident that you are sending material to a highly engaged audience. Digital PR platforms and online newsrooms also provide an insight into the outlets and influencers that pick up your story and compile visibility reports so you can see in real time how your press release is performing. Your earned media contacts receive hundreds of press releases a day, but a face-to-face meeting where you can vividly explain how exciting and interesting your story is could make all the difference when cutting through the clutter. In addition, by fostering real-life relationships with journalists, you become a trusted source of information. This increases the likelihood of outlets approaching you for a comment or referring to your owned media for inspiration. Use social media platforms to nurture your relationships with journalists and boost your credibility. Use Twitter lists to track journalists' recent posts and see what topics they're interested in. Mention a related social post in your email pitch to show that you're paying attention. Share relevant content from your industry and post unique stories for your social media audience. Finally, ask yourself, how do I want to present my story? You could send out a press release under embargo or offer one journalist exclusivity. You might also think about making the information evergreen as opposed to time-sensitive. Let's look at these 3 terms in more detail. An embargo is the tactic of distributing news to journalists before a public announcement, with the implicit understanding that the media outlet won't run the story until the date and time specified in the press release. You should ensure the embargoed information is of genuine interest to the publication's audience, for example, a product launch or company announcement. Learn about each media outlet's publishing cycle, so that your embargo date and time fits with their deadlines. Send a pre-brief and enter into a conversation to assure the journalist agrees to the embargo, either verbally or in writing. Give journalists extra time to review the material and carry out additional research. Unlike an embargo, when you pitch an exclusive, you select one journalist to share the news with ahead of time. Similar to an embargo, it's important to get a verbal or written agreement confirming that they will honour this exclusive and refrain from sharing the information with a third party. Best practice dictates that you have existing relationships with journalists and media outlets in place that will honour embargoes and appreciate receiving exclusive news. Talk off the record until the journalist agrees to the exclusive. Give the person a reasonable amount of time to respond before offering the exclusive to another journalist. Be transparent about what you're offering and what and when you will tell other publications about the news. Evergreen content is information that is always relevant and useful, rather than press releases that contain time-sensitive news stories. Because they have a longer shelf life than a news story, evergreen content can increase your chances of coverage and bring longevity to your PR efforts. Tell evergreen stories via your owned media channels and share them with journalists. If they don't get picked up immediately, they could gain traction at a later date. To help you get started, avoid pitching evergreen stories to media outlets that are in the business of breaking news, and instead focus on those that create content with a longer shelf life. Regularly revise your evergreen stories to inject new life into an old topic. You can do this by including recent research that supports your story, offering a unique or expert insight, and carrying out SEO and Twitter hashtag research to see what topics are trending. We hope you found this 3-part webinar series covering media relations useful and are keen to start connecting with journalists, crafting your unique story and thinking about distributing the perfect press release. To continue your journey, we have several videos and study guides designed to help you with your marketing efforts. To learn more about connecting with influencers and potential brand advocates, such as bloggers, celebrities and business leaders, check out our Creating Influence module. And for further guidance in defining and creating your brand story, refer to the Art of Storytelling in the PR module.